The boardroom falls silent. 20 executives stare at you across polished mahogany. Your presentation slides flicker behind you. Months of research, undeniable patterns, data that should terrify everyone in this room. Revenue streams that don't match customer behavior. Marketing spend that defies all logic. Partnerships with companies that exist only on paper. The CEO's eyes narrow. Her fingers drum against her coffee cup. "This is just fear-mongering," she says, her voice carrying that edge of authority that ends debates. The room nods in synchronized agreement, heads bobbing like dashboard ornaments. You gather your papers knowing that in 6 weeks, the headlines will scream exactly what you predicted. The company will hemorrhage millions. Careers will crumble, and you'll be the person who overthinks everything. This is your reality. You notice a tiny seam splitting in the story everyone repeats. A number that shouldn't be there. A glance that lingers 2 seconds longer than normal. An email chain that stops abruptly when you ask the wrong question. A sudden budget allocation that makes no logical sense but everyone pretends is normal. Body language that contradicts spoken words. Patterns hiding in plain sight. You mention it. People laugh. You overthink everything. They dismiss you with that patronizing smile. The one that says you're the problem, not the pattern. The one that makes you question your own sanity. Maybe they're right, you think. Maybe I am seeing things that aren't there. 3 weeks pass. The seam tears open exactly where you pointed. The quarterly report reveals the fraud. The whistleblower comes forward with documents. The investigation begins. Federal agents escort executives from the building. Stock prices collapse. Employees lose their retirement savings. No victory feels good because the cost was the argument, the distance, the label, paranoid. The cost was watching people you cared about walk blindfolded toward a cliff while calling you crazy for shouting warnings. Carl Jung had a simpler word: perception. Seeing early isn't a curse, it's a weight. A responsibility that isolates you from the very people you're trying to protect. A burden that makes you question whether ignorance might actually be bliss. Today I'll share 3 rules that let you carry that weight without losing your mind or your people. Onward thinkers, my name is Mr. Halvig, and you're watching The Rational Wise. The ancient Greeks had a word, Cassandra. The prophet cursed to see the truth but never be believed, doomed to watch tragedies unfold that she could have prevented if only someone had listened. In boardrooms, families, friend groups, Cassandras are everywhere. They're the ones who spot the micro expressions that reveal deception, who notice when the numbers don't quite add up, when the story has holes, when the timeline doesn't make sense, who feel the shift in energy before the storm hits, who see the warning signs in relationships, businesses, economies before the crash. They're the ones who mention that something feels off about the new hire during the interview process. 3 months later, that person embezzles $50,000. They're the ones who suggest diversifying investments when everyone else is riding high on a single stock. 6 months later, that company goes bankrupt. They're the ones who quietly express concern about a friend's new romantic partner. A year later, that friend calls crying about emotional abuse. Seeing patterns ahead of the crowd creates friction. People defend the picture that helps them sleep, not the detail that wakes them up. They prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. When you point to the crack in the foundation, they call you pessimistic. When you mention the red flags, they accuse you of being negative. When you share your observations, they label you paranoid. When you suggest caution, they call you fearful. But here's what they don't understand. You're not trying to be right. You're not seeking validation or superiority. You're trying to help. You're trying to protect people and systems you care about. You're sounding alarms because you genuinely believe prevention is better than cure. Individuation, as Jung used the term, is the art of staying yourself when the collective would rather you dim your sight. It's the process of becoming who you truly are, even when, especially when, the truth makes others uncomfortable. It's refusing to gaslight yourself into blindness just because seeing clearly threatens the group's illusions. It's maintaining your authentic perception while navigating a world that often punishes clarity. This isn't about being right. This isn't about superiority. This is about survival, emotional, psychological, relational. This is about maintaining your perceptual gifts without becoming a prophet, crying in the wilderness, ignored and isolated. This is about staying sane in a world that often seems determined to stay asleep. This is a field manual, not a lecture. 3 rules that work in real time, in real relationships, with real consequences. 1 simple line you can use in hard conversations that diffuses tension instead of escalating it. 2 weekly habits that keep you connected to humanity while maintaining your clarity. And a way to turn alarms into actions so urgency becomes behavior, not panic. If they've called you paranoid, if they've dismissed your insights, if they've made you question your own perceptions, stay. This will feel like oxygen. 3 survival rules. The first trap is the courtroom. You see the pattern. Your mind immediately goes to evidence gathering mode. You collect screenshots, save emails, document timelines, build airtight logical cases. You prepare your opening statement, anticipate their objections, craft rebuttals. You walk into that conversation armed for war. You talk for 20 minutes. They hear an attack in 20 seconds. Everyone leaves brittle, defensive, damaged. The relationship bears new scars and the pattern continues anyway. Why does this happen? It's ordinary psychology. When a pattern threatens someone's identity, their role, their worldview, their sense of control, they don't protect reality. They protect the image that keeps life coherent. The ego is a survival mechanism. It defends its map of the world, not the actual territory. If your observation shakes the walls of their reality, they don't examine the walls. They board up the windows. Think about it. If someone spent years building their life around a particular belief about their spouse, their boss, their investment strategy, your pattern doesn't just challenge their judgment. It challenges their entire sense of self. The cognitive dissonance is so painful that denial becomes the mercy option. The rule is simple. Name it, don't debate. Say the pattern once, briefly, almost gently, and then step away from the podium. No PowerPoints, no evidence folders, no cross-examination. Steal this line. I'm noticing X repeating. I could be wrong, just time-stamping it for myself. That sentence is surgical. It marks reality without making an enemy. It gives the other person face-saving room to disagree without feeling attacked. It puts the lesson on a timeline where time can teach without you playing judge. And it saves your nervous system for places you actually have leverage. A small story. I had a colleague who missed tiny deadlines. Nothing dramatic, just small promises that fell through cracks. But these micro failures created cascading problems weeks later. Projects derailed. Clients grew frustrated. Teams worked weekends fixing preventable issues. My first instinct was to build cases. I documented everything. I prepared presentations showing the connection between small misses and large disasters. We fought. I was right, but I was also righteously insufferable. The pattern continued and our working relationship deteriorated. I switched strategies, started naming once and logging the moment. I'm noticing the deadline shifted again. Could be nothing, just noting it. Then I'd move on to other topics. 3 weeks later, they brought it up voluntarily because consequence is the best teacher, and they needed space to see it themselves. I didn't need to win an argument. I needed to leave room for reality to speak, and reality speaks louder than any prosecutor. If you're wondering, isn't this giving up? Isn't this letting people off the hook? No. Refusing the courtroom raises the signal-to-noise ratio. It keeps your message clear and keeps you from becoming the villain in your own story. When you argue, you give them an enemy to fight. When you simply observe, you give them space to grow. Name it, then move on. The second cost is isolation. The more you see, the less you say. The more you notice, the more careful you become. You start editing yourself in conversations. You stop sharing observations because you're tired of being the bearer of bad news. You retreat into your perceptions, becoming the lone alarm bell nobody hears. Here's the trap. Paranoia isn't seeing patterns. Paranoia is losing translators. It's becoming so disconnected from human warmth that your insights turn cold, your warnings turn shrill, and your genuine care gets lost in the delivery. The rule: stay close to data, closer to people. Two simple tools that work in tandem. First, a signal log, 3 fields only: date, pattern, outcome in 7 to 30 days. 1 line each. That's it. No elaborate analysis, no emotional commentary, just facts and timelines. Why does this work? It externalizes your mind so you stop ruminating. Instead of carrying every observation like a mental burden, you download it and let time do the tutoring. The log becomes your objective witness, removing the emotional charge from your perceptions. Second, 2 weekly anchors that non-negotiably connect you to ordinary human experience. Coffee with a friend who talks about ordinary life, their kids, their hobbies, their weekend plans. Movement that gets you out of your head, walking, gym, swimming, dancing. Family or community dinner where you're just another person sharing a meal. Pick any 2 and protect them like medicine. These aren't luxuries, they're psychological necessities. These small rituals keep you readable to humans. They turn sharp insight into human language. They remind you that life is more than patterns and predictions. Use this line when a conversation gets emotionally charged. I don't need you to agree with me. I need you to know what I'll do if X repeats. That sentence is magic. It shifts you from proving to planning, from prosecutor to person with boundaries. It lowers the temperature and raises trust. You're not recruiting people into a war. You're stating your lane with calm clarity. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps more than you think. Now let's continue. A brief confession. I almost burned a friendship trying to wake them up to red flags in their relationship. I gathered evidence. I presented cases. I became relentless in my certainty that I could save them from heartbreak. The friendship nearly ended, not because I was wrong, but because I forgot they were human. When I kept the log and guarded the anchors, 2 things changed. I became less intense. They became more curious. I stopped trying to convert and started living clearly. And right after heavy conversations, I added light on purpose. Coffee, a walk, dinner with people who made me laugh. The contrast matters. It keeps you human. It reminds others that you're not just a pattern recognition machine, but a person who enjoys simple pleasures and ordinary connections. Here's the slow reveal. This is the rule people break first. They keep the data and drop the people. They maintain their logs but abandon their anchors. Then the world confirms their worst fear. See? I'm alone. No one understands me. I'm the only one who sees clearly. The cure is built in. Add people back as a practice. Your perception needs translators. People who can help you communicate insights in ways that land softly instead of exploding on impact. The third rule is dose the darkness 1 red flag per conversation. 2 safeguards, then move on. Otherwise, everything becomes an emergency. Burnout is what happens when every signal becomes apocalypse. When every pattern feels like the end of the world. When you lose the ability to distinguish between minor corrections and major catastrophes. Then no one hears you, including your future self. Picture this. You walk into a room with 5 different concerns. The quarterly numbers look suspicious. The new hire has questionable references. The project timeline seems unrealistic. The client communication feels off. The team dynamics are shifting strangely. You unload all five. The room goes quiet. Eyes glaze over. People shut down. They can't process that much potential darkness at once, so they process none of it. The rule: dose the darkness. One red flag per conversation. Convert alarms into actions. Try this reframe. Here are 2 safeguards I'm using. Want them? This changes everything. Instead of being the prophet of doom, you become the person with practical solutions. Instead of overwhelming people with problems, you offer manageable tools. Instead of creating panic, you create preparation. Actions beat speeches every time. You're not the narrator of the end times. You're the person with the checklist that helps today. People can't absorb your anxiety, but they can adopt your systems. A short story. I used to unload 5 threats at once in team meetings. Budget concerns, timeline risks, resource shortages, client dissatisfaction, technical debt. I thought comprehensive warnings showed thorough leadership. Instead, people froze. Decision paralysis set in. Nothing improved. When I limited myself to one concern and paired it with 2 concrete actions, adoption tripled. I'm watching the client response time closely. I'm setting up weekly check-ins and creating a backup communication channel. Want the template? People can do one thing today. They can't survive 5 endings of the world. They can implement 2 safeguards this week. They can't rebuild their entire reality. Keep a pocket checklist that becomes your new rhythm. Name it, note it, live your life. Say the thing once, write it down, then return to the scene called being a person. This isn't suppression. This is bandwidth management. Calm isn't apathy. Calm is the capacity to respond effectively instead of reacting dramatically. When you dose the darkness, people can actually hear the light. 1 red flag, 2 actions. Why do they call you paranoid? Not because you're wrong. Usually you're uncomfortably right. They call you paranoid because your pattern threatens the story that helps them sleep. Jung called this shadow, parts of life we lock in a room and pretend not to hear. The inconvenient truths, the uncomfortable realities, the aspects of existence we'd rather ignore. When truth knocks on that locked door, the first reflex isn't to open it. The first reflex is to bolt it shut, to turn up the music, to call the person knocking a troublemaker, to label them paranoid, negative, pessimistic, anything to avoid facing what's actually there. But here's what Jung understood. The shadow doesn't disappear when we ignore it. It grows stronger in the darkness. The patterns you see early are often shadows trying to surface. Problems that will eventually demand attention, whether we're ready or not. Seeing too much is a gift with weight. Like any powerful tool, it can help or hurt depending on how you wield it. These 3 rules share the weight so the gift survives. Name without debate, measure while staying close to people, dose the darkness so urgency becomes behavior. The goal isn't to make people see what you see. The goal is to see clearly while staying connected to the people you care about. To maintain your perceptual gifts without sacrificing your humanity. To be the person who notices early and responds wisely, not the person who's always right, but always alone. Back to the opening scene. You notice the seam in the company's story. This time you name it once. I'm seeing some inconsistencies in the quarterly projections. Could be nothing, just flagging it. You write the observation in your log. You keep your coffee date with your friend. You offer 2 simple safeguards to your team. Weeks pass. The pattern surfaces exactly as you predicted. But this time, you're not bitter. You're ready. The friendship with your colleague is intact. The team trusts your judgment because you earned it with restraint, not arguments. You didn't need the courtroom victory. You needed clarity with connection. You didn't need to be right. You needed to be useful. Perception is not paranoia. If this landed, type 1 word in the comments, C. Tell me the last pattern you spotted early and the single line you'll use next time instead of building a case and starting an argument. I'll pick a few responses and show exactly how to frame them without losing relationships or your sanity. Let me know what you think in the comments. I read every single one. And of course, subscribe for more high-value content. Before you go, if today's video helped you stay sane when you see too much, watch The Prohibited Theory of Carl Jung about dreams no one tells you. Today we learned survival rules for hyperperception. Next, discover where that perception is born, the hidden door Jung described. In about 12 minutes, we map the dream network, why some dreams aren't random, and how night signals quietly script daytime choices. If you've ever felt guided or warned before events unfolded, this ties it together. Tap the thumbnail, I'll meet you there. Onward, thinkers.